Welcome to Protecting Our Freedoms podcast. I am your host, Joy Vautrebeck, with my co-host, Mark Renahan.
How you doing, Joy?
Good, how are you, Mark?
Very good.
And today, podcast, we will be interviewing a cybersecurity expert about current threats to individuals and organizations, why social media posts matter, and how to protect yourself from unwanted attacks. You can view all of our podcasts on our website at www.ascf.us, as well as YouTube and Rumble by typing in American Security Council Foundation. We would appreciate your support to keep this podcast and all of our educational programs alive.
Yeah, you can absolutely donate to us at www.ascf.us. Well, today, as Joy said, we are talking about cybersecurity. In particular, we're going to discuss how to keep your organization, your business, your nonprofit, whatever you may be doing, safe. We have with us today a former member of our advisory board, a former United States Marine who served proudly in the original Desert Shield, Desert Storm conflict, and is currently a cybersecurity specialist, Mr. Xavier Piedra. How are you, sir?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, it's great to have you on. So, X, we want to get right into it. I know you do a lot of work with companies, and you test their organizational, security and stuff like that. What do you think is the best way to keep your company secure, and what are some of the threats that companies have to worry about?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. Some simple things that, should be done on a regular basis is, regular patch management and dual factor authentication is also something that, companies should be looking at right now, regardless of the size of your organization, especially when you're, like, for example, dual factor authentication. I think Google offers free, readers in order to generators, digital generators for the dual factor authentication, or you could go something like Okta, another, or an RSA type token.
All right, X, so I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to just remind you that none of us know what an RSA is or a two-type token. So I want you to pretend when you're speaking, you're talking to me in a third grader's tone. So an RSA, what is that?
Well, what I'm referencing the two-factor authentication. What that is in RSA, when I was referencing that, was just an example. For example, Google Authenticator, RSA tokens. These are token generators. So what they do is they produce a string of digits on a random, or not a random, but a fixed time frame. And you use a portion of those digits are sent to you. Oftentimes, I think you guys probably run into these things when you're doing banking transactions sometimes, or you get a text with a code and you have to enter that code in order to proceed into your dashboard or whatever you're trying to log into. That's what I'm referring to when I say dual factor authentication. And like I said, when I was referencing RSA tokens or Google Authenticator, those are applications that you would use to generate those tokens. Does that make sense?
It does.
So, Xavier, do you
go ahead.
Do you recommend any authenticator over another?
No. They I wouldn't say there's one that's better than the other. It's because it's the token itself is generated in a way that is random. And for example, let's say it's generating a string of like 30 characters. You're only receiving 6 of those 30 characters, and you don't know which 6 you're getting. So the randomization of how they generate those, those values doesn't give, one company a head up over another company. So it's more so having that layer than recommending or endorsing any individual company.
All right, so let me ask you a question. So that's something obviously that would be used at a massive company, for example, it would be quite expensive to set up all of your machines and stuff with that. What is something that John Q. Public would do to keep their regular old, you're in a small company with say 10 people. What's something to do to keep that safe? Is it antivirus or is there something else you should be doing?
Oh, well, as I started off, patch management, basically, what does that mean? It means making sure your systems, not only on the operating system level, which is your platform, like your Windows 10 or your Windows servers, but you're also your Apple devices and your Linux devices, making sure that they're getting patched, which on a monthly basis, Windows, for example, on Patch Tuesday releases a set of patches, a set of fixes to the platform itself to secure the platform. Now, oftentimes, many people, and you can actually schedule these things to happen during off hours, but many times, because it's not scheduled, it'll pop up and people are working or whatever. They look at these, the notifications from the operating system, trying to, remind you to, please patch me. And you're busy doing something. And you're like, oh, not now, later. And later never comes. That's why you should, schedule these things or have someone manage these things so that all your devices are on the latest software. Why is that important? It's because vulnerability management, there are vulnerabilities in software, regardless of if it's at the OS level, for example, Windows, Apple, Linux, or at the application layer, whether it be WhatsApp or anything that you have installed on your device. And when I say device, I'm not just talking about your computers. You gotta also patch your tablets and cell phones as well. That right there is probably one of the most simplest things that everybody can do that many people don't do. And that's how, you get breached. That's how, you get exploited by, whether it be a hacker, a disgruntled, employee, possibly, or or accidentally having, an employee accidentally click on something which, would then, take advantage of those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I understand, because sometimes I see that update come up on my screen and I'm in the middle of something and I want to ignore it.
Yeah, like I said, that's all, that's valid, because what people need to understand is, especially when you're dealing with security, is you're not trying to inhibit, production. You're not trying to put a roadblock in to where, the person who's using the computer is like, oh, I can't do this because, updates are happening. Like I said, the best way to do this is manage this and put it on every weekend or once a weekend, or every Friday night, we're going to install these patches. And what you should do is, if you're an organization, split it over 2 weeks, so do the first, do half of your organization 1 week, do the other half 2 weeks after. So that way, if there were to be a problem with that patch, you wouldn't have rolled it out to the entire, organization.
And I wrote this down because I think I heard you say Windows Patch Tuesday. So that means every Tuesday Windows comes out with a patch, or?
Well, that's a great question. It's Patch Tuesday is a monthly, is when they come out. The second Tuesday of every month, Windows releases all their patches for that month, for the previous month, unless it's a 0 day. A 0 day is a vulnerability that comes out that has just been discovered. Many times they're either alerted to by a third party or by the company themselves, and who says, we've detected this. We either have a patch or we're coming out with a patch, and we're notifying you right now. Recently, there have been a lot of patches for Exchange servers that 0 days related to Exchange servers, and which is one of the things that have been exploited lately.
This is why you'll get a kilobyte size security update in like the middle of Friday.
Interesting.
Right.
By the way, go ahead. That's
Right.
Noah, our engineer, who
engineer.
also knows a lot about cybersecurity. But go ahead, Xavier.
No, exactly. And that's a great thing. Great question, a great statement there. These things will pop up in the middle of your workday. Asking basically, can we do this now? Because it's system generated, and it's like I said, they're not trying to inhibit you from working, but they're just trying to remind you, even if you can't. There's oftentimes it pops up and it lets you schedule for after hours. You should be scheduling that to happen after hours, because like I said, you don't want to be the reason why your company gets exploited, or you don't want to be in the newspaper for having been breached. And that goes along with who are these threat actors who are doing these things, and it could be anyone from an insider threat to a hacktivist to a nation state to organized crime. So there are many different threat vectors there, and you're constantly trying to protect from both internal and external issues. So when you're looking at your environment, you should have some sort of defense in depth plan, so is that you're not basically, if a threat does get past one layer of security, you're not giving up the keys to the kingdom. So for example, if segmentation is possible, what is segmentation? That means breaking up your network. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this, and I'll give you a really simple example that will help, I think, all of our listeners today. In your homes, a lot of people have their internet from their internet service provider. They come in, in my situation, it would be Comcast. They come in, they provide you a router. That router often has 3 zones, which it's got one that says, for example, like, it's got 3 zones. I don't know exactly how they're broken down. One of them, one zone.
How about zone 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, we don't know what the zones are.
Zone 1, 2, and 3.
Zone 1, 2, and 3. Zone 1 you would use for your internet, for yourself, for your family, for the people who live at your house. Zone 2 is where you should keep your Internet of Things. What are those? Your refrigerators, your Alexa, your Nest devices, anything that has a computer that links to the internet that is not something that you're interacting with on a regular basis. And the third zone would be a guest zone. So that way, when people come over to your house, come over to your business, they're not jumping on that center, on the main network where your work and your valuable data is being kept.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. I never knew that.
I didn't know that either, because I didn't know you could separate the Internet of Things versus just your...
It's nice that Xfinity tells you that when they're selling it, when they're installing it, that they let you know.
They want to get in and out. So, and they, it's one of these things where it's in the paperwork they give you, but no one ever reads the paperwork.
Well, I actually want them to get in and out too, so I can't actually blame them fully. I'm usually just, but our next subject is a little bit of an argument that Joy and I have been having. We thought you might help us with. Joy, if you'd like to bring it up.
Yes, so we have this argument on and off, and I disagree with using TikTok for security reasons, and Mark loves it, and I know a lot of Americans love it. So can you give us a little insight into your thoughts on TikTok and other social media apps?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, one thing you always have to remember when you're dealing with, social media is that when you're not paying for a service, you're actually the commodity. What does that mean? That means in the end user license agreement that nobody reads, everyone just clicks the box and goes next to get into the platform that you're trying to get into. They're basically telling you right straight out that they're harvesting your information, that they're listening to your conversations. It's not illegal because they're stating it right, plain and simple right there. And they're saying that they're going to use this information for marketing purposes. The problem is oftentimes that information gets into the wrong hands, and it's not just for marketing purposes anymore. And now someone's weaponized it, and you're now a target of some way. So you have to be responsible with social media. You shouldn't just, for example, one of the things that I often see, especially like on Facebook, are those quizzes. Where they
where's
ask,
your hometown from?
questions.
What's your first pet?
Exactly. And people jump on this. Oh, this is fun, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to click on this. But what they're doing is they're actually clicking on a marketing firm who's now you're giving a marketing firm additional rights on your device to start scraping information. I'll give you an example of this. Just happened to me this week. I was talking to a friend of mine. Both our mothers are elderly, and we were talking about getting some sort of meal plan, sort of like a Meals on Wheels type of scenario delivered to them. He mentioned a company to me, one that I've never heard of, and as soon as I got off the phone, I was inundated with ads for that company. And all, he mentioned, my friend mentioned it on a phone call that I was using just regular, the Android Samsung phone, using the text, he texted me the address. And sure enough, like I said, within, hours, if not sooner, I'm receiving ads for this. I've never heard of this, company before. And, they pick up on, keywords in order to try to market to you. And what's wrong with that? Some people may say, some people may, people have, people are, may think that they need to, they use that information to sell you stuff. Well, that's fine. But once again, that information can get weaponized, and in the wrong hands, will be used to exploit you. I'll give you another example here.
Xavier,
and this goes
not to interrupt you, but can you back up a little bit? Do you think that phone call was because of the phone call or the text?
I think it's because of text, actually.
Okay.
I think it's because of the text.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because he had mentioned the service, and he was fumbling with the name, and it wasn't until I got the text with the link in it, which I did not click on, but because I received the link on my phone, it now, Facebook then picked up on the link and started feeding me ads for that company.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Go ahead, didn't mean to interrupt.
Sure, and I was, what I was going to say is often, a lot of organizations, along with a business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan, should have, some sort of cyber security education plan as well, to try to, educate, because cybersecurity, you're protecting the assets of your company. You're protecting, your livelihood. So it's security is everybody's, everyone's responsibility. So the company should provide you with some sort of training, some sort of what to click on, what not to click on, and the reason why that although that some people may say, oh, that's so obvious, why would I would I waste my time with that? It may be obvious to you, but it may not be obvious to all people, and that's why you do that. And like I was going to say, so here's another way people or nation states or threat actors get your information is sometimes they'll do what's called a watering hole attack. There's something very interesting that happened down in Texas. There was a oil company down there that was bidding on, who was doing research for their next proposed bid on where they wanted to drill. They had the environment locked down so that they thought that no one can get in, no one's going to be able to get this information. A nation state who was who couldn't get in figured out, well, these people often order late night food or lunch from a specific restaurant in the area. What they did is they went, these threat actors went to the company, the restaurant, exploited a weakness in their website, and then used that website, the ordering menu off their website, in order to breach the company, because the company had gone there. They had then redirected to to their fake site and had them ordering, which at time they were actually just implanting malware in order to breach their security. So these are pivot attacks that happen. If people often think, oh, I don't know anything, I'm nobody. You have to understand that these are algorithms that are collecting your information and drawing connections between you and their target, whether you are their target or not. And these people are not above using your kids to exploit you. If they can't get you to click on something, they'll target your kids and send them stuff to get them to click on stuff, because they're trying to infect the network itself. So it's education is a big part of teaching people when to click, when not to click. And if you do click and something that does happen, you better be ready to respond to that. Then that's why you have to have a business continuity plan. Let's say you have, insider threat is one of the biggest issues that people, that all organizations have. And whether that be accidental or a disgruntled worker who, causes the breach, it still causes not only does it cause a loss of time, but it could cause a loss of revenue and reputation, your brand name. So that's why it's important to have plans in place. So for example, if you're downsizing your company, or if you've caught someone doing something that rates termination, you have to have a plan in place to cut that access before you actually present them with the termination information. Because if they still have access to your systems, it may not be the clean cut break that you want, and these people come back and maliciously vandalize, or worse, steal your information and put it out there, for public.
All right, so now that everybody is horrified about their computers and their phones and social media, a next little thing I wanted to bring up quickly, because I know we don't have a ton of time, is, so you're telling us all of these horrible things that can happen, and obviously we're dealing with the worst people in the world if they're attacking delivery orders. If trying to get some pizza and someone goes in there and hacks it, that's just unheard of. But anyway, do you believe, because we here at Protecting Our Freedoms believe that education is a huge factor. Do you think that cybersecurity, or I know one of the reasons why I know nothing about computers is because we didn't have it. I mean, we did have one course, one grade that I don't remember paying attention to. But do you think that cybersecurity, or just more in-depth computer teaching, should be part of core curriculum in our schools in the United States?
Oh, absolutely, and not just in your schools. Like I said, you should be targeting, especially you should be targeting senior groups. Senior centers, because they have, not only do they have access, but they have money to, buy, digital equipment, more so than your kids do. So, cybersecurity, teaching people what they should be doing, what they, when they should stop and think about what they should be doing, is probably one of the most important, things that you can do for your organization is get that education out there. And to go back to one other thing that we were talking about earlier, is social media good? Is social media bad? It's just a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool, and it can do good things and bad things depending on whose hands it is. And I know, Mark, I know you're a big social media guy, and I love those TikTok videos with the crocodiles. But one of the things I was going to mention about that, it's a good thing to actually have a presence, because if you don't and someone wants to target you, they can create a fake presence for you, and then move on. And what damage does that do to you and your reputation? So it's good to have yourself out there, but it's also good to control what it is you're putting out there, and understand that, unlike when we were young, thankfully, most anything that I've done is there's no record of it.
Not that you've done anything, Xavier, of course.
But nowadays, everything that you do online and post is there perpetual. So I mean, someone's gonna find,
So it doesn't really matter if it's
skinny
TikTok.
dipping and not.
So technically, Xavier, if I didn't put out crocodile videos, there's a chance that I would be mimicked and copied, and my reputation would be that of destroyed. Someone might try to copy me, which I don't think is possible, but still, yeah. So anyway, that is quite interesting. All right, so before we wrap it up, give us a quick, brief Xavier's advice to the average person on what they need to do to keep their phone safe, or just whatever. What's the number one thing to do? Changing passwords? What?
The number one thing I would say to do is make sure your updates are current. On a monthly basis, your devices should be reminding you, but on a monthly basis, you should have a reminder in your calendar to check, am I current? And if I was going to schedule a reminder like that, I would probably have that reminder go off on the second Friday of every month, because like I said, Windows releases Patch Tuesday patches on the second Tuesday of every month. So that's number one. Number two, I would rotate my password every 90 days, or come up with what's called a passphrase. If you come up with and I know most people are going to be like, what are you talking about? But if you can come up with a phrase with, alphanumeric characters, that is, at least 20, we'll say, I haven't looked it up, but I'm going to say at least 20 characters, 26 characters. The the time that it would take for for a computer to crack that would make you a less attractive target than someone who has a 10-digit password who they can crack in in hours.
So I should change my password from password 1
to phrase.
Yes, change your password 1 or password 123. I don't know if you guys remember earlier on this year there was a everyone was breached basically because the solar wind what happened with solar winds that I don't know if you remember hearing about this back in like January, February. Solar winds it's a logistical platform that many companies use. Threat actors got in there. They corrupted one of the patches that was that was being released. People ingested these packages, and every organization that ingested that package was then subsequently breached as a result. And when the reason I bring this up is because Mark just brought up Windows password 123. I believe during their investigation, they found that one of the passwords that was being used that was actually breached was SolarWinds 123 or something like that, which is absolutely ridiculous that anyone would have anything like that.
Well, anyway, no, I'm kidding. My passwords are there.
A phrase is the safest.
Absolutely. Go with the phrase. It's the easiest. And, it's, think about if you should, and the last thing I was going to say is segmentation. But the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because what you should do is you should also segment not only your network, but segment your IDs. So for example, if you have, you've got banking, you've got your social media, you probably have your Internet of Things. A lot of people just use one username for all, for everything across the board. And think about that. If I have your one username for, let's say, your social media, I'm going to bet that there's a deviation of that, if not the same, username is being used on other platforms, and that's half the battle. So now I know that you're Mark Renahan, and your email address is whatever at gmail.com, and so now I'm going to use that information, maybe even just the base without the at gmail.com, and try to stick that in order to try to gain access to your personal information.
Mark Renahan 123.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I love cupcakes is my username.
But that's a good phrase, right
there. You go. There's a phrase. But Xavier, listen, we are looking forward to flying you down here and doing a full cyber security, whatever of our system. So I'm looking forward to that, and I have a feeling you're going to tell me that mine is a nightmare. But after you do that, we will talk. But everybody, we want to thank you today for joining us. We had cybersecurity expert Xavier Piedra on the show. We were talking about safety, security within your computer systems. We'll probably have Xavier back on at a different point. Maybe after he does our systems, he can tell us all the nightmares he found on it. But anyway.
And we can no longer argue over TikTok?
Yes.
How do you feel about VPNs in some capacity for private use?
That's a good question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat
VPNs.
that?
How do you feel about VPNs?
Oh, you should always be on your VPNs. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, good.
So going back to my segmentation, how I gave you the example of how you should have your home, your Internet of Things, and your guests. Even while you're at home on your home network, if you're accessing sensitive material, or if you're using your company's laptop, you should be with your company's information. You should be VPN'd at all times. A lot of people, let's say, especially now with COVID, a lot of people are working from home still. A lot of people haven't returned back to the office, and that's great. And the thing you got to remember is, if they're not at home, which is fine, they want to go sit downtown or at a cafe or someplace and have a cup of coffee, take a break, and still work through. That's fine. But the problem is as you don't know where you're connecting. You're assuming that you're connecting to, for example, the free internet at Starbucks, or the free internet that your town provides. But a malicious actor may mimic that same access point, have you log into them, and now they're on your network. They have access to your computer. But if you VPN in if you VPN in, if you set up a VPN on your computer, and VPN stands for virtual private network, that is one more layer. So they would need to authenticate in order to get further in. So you've now established another layer in your defensive layer strategy there.
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of VPN. I use it myself.
I'm a big fan of VPN segment and RSA, so
You will
I'm
be
a
soon, right?
cyber expert here. So anyway,
You will be soon.
yes,
once we get
exactly.
through
Once
this.
we're done with you, Xavier, I'll be an expert. But once again, we had Xavier Piedra, a cybersecurity expert. He is a member of InfraGard, which is the civilian FBI partnership on cyber crimes. He is also a former United States Marine who was in the original Desert Shield, Desert Storm, way back in 1991-92, you old Marine. Anyway, Xavier, thank you for joining us. Say hello to my goddaughter, Margaret, please. And to the missus and to the Caroline little one and to all the sisters and brothers. And thank you for stopping by. Joy, you want to take us out?
Yes, thank you everyone for listening today. Join us again next time as we talk more about protecting your freedoms.
Thank you very much, everybody. You can check us out at www.facebook.com/protecting our freedoms. We're also on YouTube, Rumble, all the Instagram, all the social media ones.
And our website, www.ascf.us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.